Oak Bridge Reserve announced itself not with warmth, but with imposing wrought iron gates and the cold gleam of surveillance cameras mounted atop stone pillars. It was less a neighborhood, more a meticulously controlled fortress, where property values were discussed in the hushed, reverent tones usually reserved for sacred texts, and where deviation from the norm was treated not as eccentricity, but as heresy. Within these gates, where manicured perfection was the unquestioned deity, resided Beverly Thorne. Beverly, a woman whose middle age had settled into sharp, judgmental lines around her eyes and mouth, wasn't merely a resident. She was the self-appointed guardian of Oak Bridge's rigid order, the high priestess officiating at the altar of the HOA handbook, as chair of the all-powerful Community Standards Committee and a zealous gatehouse volunteer. She wielded her encyclopedic knowledge of bylaws like a weapon, her gaze constantly scanning for infractions, her linen trousers perpetually creased with militant precision. Her interpretation of her role extended far beyond administrative duties. She was the ultimate arbiter, the gatekeeper not just of vehicles, but of perceived belonging. Empathy, it seemed, had long ago been pruned back, along with the precisely shaped ornamental shrubs that lined the pristine sidewalks. On a sweltering, humid Tuesday evening, the air thick and still, dusk was beginning to bleed streaks of bruised purple and angry orange across the oppressive sky. Inside the Miller residence, on the impeccably named Azalea Court, that oppressive atmosphere turned terrifyingly literal. 7-year-old Lily Miller, moments before a blur of giggles and playful energy in the living room, suddenly crumpled to the floor. Her breath hitched, became shallow, ragged. A horrifying cyanotic tinge began to creep across her small face, stark against her pale skin. Anaphylactic shock, swift, brutal, triggered by an insidious, unknown allergen. Her mother, Sarah, let out a primal scream, dropping beside her daughter, calling her name over and over. Her father, Tom, fumbled for his phone, his fingers thick and clumsy with panic, frantically dialing 911. His voice cracked, trembled, as he relayed the nightmare unfolding in his living room to the calm, disembodied voice of the emergency dispatcher. "My daughter, Lily." She collapsed. She can't breathe properly. Her face is turning blue. "Oh God, please, hurry." The dispatcher, a lifeline of professional calm in their vortex of terror, processed the information instantly. "Okay, sir. Listen carefully. I need you to." Instructions followed. Check the airway. Position her while simultaneously. The electronic tones confirmed the dispatch of the nearest advanced life support ALS ambulance. "They're en route, sir. Priority 1. ATA is less than 5 minutes from their current location. Stay on the line with me. Help is coming." Inside the vibrating cabin of Ambulance 73, paramedic Daniel Hayes gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Beside him, his partner, Maria Rodriguez, read the incoming details from the console display. Pediatric respiratory arrest, suspected anaphylaxis, 7-year-old female, Azalea Court, Oak Bridge Reserve, Code 3, lights and sirens. Daniel, young, but with eyes that held the weary experience of countless emergencies crammed into too few years, felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, a controlled burn sharpened by intense focus. He expertly navigated the heavy evening traffic. The siren's urgent wail-whoop wail parting cars like the Red Sea. The flashing lights painting streaks of red and blue across startled faces. Every shaved second mattered. His mind, a rapid-fire processor, cycled through pediatric anaphylaxis protocols, epinephrine dose calculation, airway, Adjuncts. Oxygen saturation targets. The fourth access strategy. In the back, amidst the organized clutter of medical supplies, Maria was already prepping the pediatric airway kit, drawing up the EpiPen Jr., ensuring the oxygen tank was full. They were a seamless team, their movements economical, their communication terse, honed by the crucible of shared crises. As they turned onto the final main road leading towards the imposing entrance of Oakbridge Reserve, Daniel instinctively eased off the piercing wail of the siren, letting it die down to an urgent yelp before cutting it entirely. It was standard practice when entering quiet residential neighborhoods late in the evening, unless absolutely necessary to clear immediate obstacles, a courtesy to sleeping residents. The emergency lights, however, continued their frantic, silent strobing, painting the manicured entrance landscaping in pulsing flashes of emergency red and critical blue. He pulled the heavy ambulance smoothly up to the closed, ornate wrought iron gates, expecting them to sense the vehicle's official markings and swing open automatically, or for the attendant presumably stationed in the small, official-looking gatehouse nestled beside the entrance to grant immediate, unquestioning access. Emergencies trumped procedure. Always. Instead, the gate remained stubbornly, inexplicably shut, and standing just inside the brightly lit gatehouse, silhouetted against the glow of a monitor displaying multiple security camera feeds, was Beverly Thorne. She held up a hand, palm out, fingers spread. In the universally recognized gesture for stop, Daniel frowned, a knot of disbelief tightening in his gut. He rolled down his window, the thick, humid night air rushing in, heavy with the cloying scent of night-blooming jasmine, and a sudden, inexplicable sense of dread. "Paramedics!" he called out, forcing his voice to remain level, professional, despite the frantic urgency clawing at his throat. "We have a critical pediatric emergency inside. Respiratory arrest. We need immediate access. Open the gate." Beverly Thorne stepped deliberately out of the air-conditioned coolness of the gatehouse, clipboard held firmly against her chest like a piece of tactical armor. Her expression wasn't one of concern or even curiosity. It was a carefully composed mask of suspicion and bureaucratic inflexibility. "Oakbridge Reserve Emergency Vehicle Access Protocol," she began, her voice sharp, clipped, utterly devoid of warmth or apparent understanding of the flashing lights painting her face red and blue. Section 4. Subsection B clearly states. She consulted her clipboard unnecessarily, having clearly memorized the passage, that all non-resident vehicles, including emergency services not previously logged for scheduled access, are required to enter through the designated commercial and service gate located on the North Perimeter Road. Daniel stared at her, momentarily speechless, stunned into silence by the sheer, mind-numbing absurdity of her statement. He could hear the frantic ticking of the clock in his own head, each tick representing precious, oxygen-starved seconds for the child inside those gates. "MAAM," he said, struggling to keep the desperation from his voice. "This is a life-threatening emergency. A 7-year-old child is not breathing. We don't have time to go around to the service gate. That could add 5-6 minutes. Open this gate, now." His hand instinctively tightened on the steering wheel. Rules and protocols are implemented for the safety, security, and tranquility of all Oakbridge Reserve residents, Beverly retorted coolly, her gaze unwavering, seemingly impervious to the flashing emergency lights reflecting in her eyes. Unscheduled, unverified access, even by emergency vehicles, compromises the integrity of our security perimeter. I don't see this vehicle. Ambulance 73. On the pre-approved emergency access log provided by management this morning, Has your dispatch contacted HOA Security Management via the designated channels to obtain clearance for entry? Are you kidding me right now? Maria exclaimed, leaning across Daniel, her own professional composure cracking under the sheer lunacy of the situation. Her voice was sharp with disbelief and rising anger. A little girl is dying. Call 911 yourself. They'll verify. We are responding to 12 Azalea Court. Lily Miller, she stopped breathing. What part of that don't you understand? Beverly sniffed disdainfully, tapping her clipboard with a sharp click of her manicured fingernail, a flash of crimson against the white paper. Unauthorized access is unauthorized access. Procedures must be followed. Furthermore, she added, her eyes narrowing slightly as she peered at Daniel and Maria, I require positive identification from both vehicle occupants before considering any deviation from established protocol. A flicker of something, perhaps a fleeting memory of her own son's childhood bee sting. The frantic rush for the EpiPen she kept crossed her mind, but she instantly suppressed it. That was different. We were prepared. Rules prevent chaos. Daniel felt a surge of hot, desperate anger rise within him, so intense it almost choked him. He pictured a different call. Years ago, an elderly man, a stroke victim. Delayed entry due to a malfunctioning apartment complex gate. The man hadn't made it. The image flashed, visceral and sickening. Not again, not this time. He forced the anger down, years of training kicking in, channeling the fury into action, arguing with this woman. This automaton of bureaucracy was wasting precious seconds Lily didn't have. Dispatch. This is Ambulance 73, he radioed, his voice tight, strained, trying to keep the tremor out. His finger, however, visibly shook as he keyed the mic. Be advised. We are being denied access at the main gate of Oakbridge Reserve for the Azalea Court Pediatric Code. Gate attendant, he glanced at Beverly's impassive face, is refusing entry, citing HOA protocol, requesting immediate police assistance to facilitate emergency entry. Repeat. Pediatric patient is code blue. Access obstructed. He relayed Beverly Thorne's name and her specific objections, his voice dripping with barely suppressed fury. The silence from the dispatcher was heavy, pregnant with shared disbelief. Before the clipped confirmation came, copy 73, PD unit en route, priority 1, ADA 2 minutes. Inside the Miller house on Azalea Court, time had slowed to a thick, agonizing crawl. Tom, guided by the dispatcher's calm instructions over the speakerphone, was performing chest compressions on his daughter's terrifyingly still form. Each compression felt like a betrayal, a violation of her small, fragile body. Yet he pushed on, tears streaming down his face, blurring his vision. He counted aloud, the numbers catching in his throat. Sarah knelt beside them, sobbing uncontrollably, her body racked with a grief so profound it felt physical. She clutched the phone as if it were Lily's hand, her knuckles white. Where are they? She choked out between sobs, her voice raw with anguish. Oh God, Tom, where are they? The silence outside their home felt suffocating, mocking. Back at the Oakbridge Reserve gate, the tableau remained frozen in a standoff of deadly absurdity. Beverly Thorne stood firm, clipboard hugged to her chest. The very picture of intractable bureaucracy. The ambulance sat idling, its lights painting the scene in urgent, pulsing strokes of red and blue, a stark visual representation of the life hanging in the balance, just yards away. The air crackled with tension, thick with the unsaid, the unthinkable. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump Daniel heard wasn't just the engine. It felt like his own heart hammering against his ribs. Or maybe the ghost of the compressions Tom Miller was performing. Filing a police report against me for upholding community regulations will also require the proper procedure, Beverly informed Daniel coolly, adjusting her perfectly creased trousers, as if discussing a minor noise complaint or an improperly placed garden gnome. Perhaps if your dispatch service had followed the correct channels initially, this entire situation could have been avoided. For God's sake, woman, Daniel finally snapped, the dam of his professional restraint bursting under the unbearable pressure. His voice cracked, raw with desperation and fury. He slammed his fist lightly on the dashboard, a gesture of utter helplessness. There is a child, dying, not breathing, literally feet away from us, because you are standing here worried about a goddamn rulebook. What is wrong with you? Don't you have a heart? His outburst, raw and unprofessional as it was, had no discernible effect other than seeming to harden Beverly's resolve. Her lips thinned into a tight, disapproving line. I will not be intimidated or bullied into violating community regulations, she stated, her voice turning glacial. My responsibility is to the bylaws of this community and the safety of its residents from unauthorized intrusions. Procedures exist for a reason. Just then, a new set of flashing lights appeared down the road, rapidly approaching, the distinct pattern of a police cruiser. The patrol car pulled up swiftly behind the ambulance. A uniformed officer, face grim, emerged quickly, took in the scene, the ambulance blocked. Beverly standing defiant, the urgency palpable, and strode purposefully towards Beverly. "MAAM," the officer commanded, his voice calm, but carrying the unmistakable weight of law enforcement authority, leaving absolutely no room for argument or interpretation. You need to open this gate. Immediately. This is an ambulance responding to a confirmed critical medical emergency. Beverly started to protest, instinctively raising her clipboard, beginning to cite her rulebook again. Officer. Oakbridge Protocol clearly states. The officer cut her off sharply, taking a step closer. "MAAM. I am not interested in your protocols right now. Open the gate, and now, or you will be placed under arrest for felony obstruction of emergency services and interfering with emergency medical personnel. Make your choice." Faced with the direct, unambiguous threat of immediate arrest, handcuffs, a patrol car, a violation of her ordered world far more terrifying than letting an ambulance through, Beverly Thorne's rigid facade finally, visibly cracked. A flicker of fear, perhaps even comprehension, flashed in her eyes, with the look of profound personal indignation, as if she were the one being grievously wronged. She turned with stiff reluctance and stalked back to the gatehouse keypad. She jabbed the open button with unnecessary force. With a low hydraulic whine, the heavy iron gates began to swing ponderously inward. Daniel didn't wait. The moment the gap was wide enough, he slammed the ambulance into gear. The tires squealed slightly on the pristine pavement as the vehicle surged forward, accelerating rapidly, racing against the time Beverly had stolen, hurtling towards Azalea Court and the child whose life hung by the thinnest of threads. The entire confrontation at the gate, from the moment the ambulance stopped to the moment it surged forward, had lasted nearly 6 agonizing minutes. 6 minutes that felt like a lifetime. 6 minutes Lily Miller desperately didn't have. Daniel and Maria burst through the front door of 12 Azalea Court into a scene of utter devastation. Tom was still performing CPR, his movements mechanical, his face a mask of exhausted grief. Sarah was crumpled on the floor beside him, her cries now low, guttural moans. Lily lay on the living room rug, small, terrifyingly still, her skin a dusky, mottled blue-gray, unresponsive. No spontaneous respirations. No palpable pulse. "We got her," Maria announced, her voice loud, commanding, cutting through the parents' grief. They moved with practiced, desperate efficiency, seamlessly taking over CPR from Tom. Daniel established an airway, inserting an endotracheal tube into the tiny girl's trachea, while Maria secured the fourth access in a small vein in Lily's arm. Epinephrine was administered. Oxygen, pure and vital, was forced into her starved lungs via an ambu bag. The rhythmic compression continued. Check pulse. Nothing. Another round of epi. Check pulse. Still nothing. The silence in the room was broken only by the whoosh of the ambu bag, the frantic beeping of the cardiac monitor, showing a flat line, turning occasionally into agonal rhythms, and the muffled sobs of the parents huddled together in the doorway, watching their worst nightmare unfold. The minutes stretched, thick with dread, each second an eternity. Then, miraculously, impossibly, after what felt like forever, a flicker on the monitor, a weak, thready pulse registered, slow, but present. "We got a rhythm," Daniel exclaimed, relief washing over him, quickly followed by grim determination. They worked rapidly to stabilize her, administering further medications, carefully monitoring her fragile, vital signs. They swiftly packaged her onto the pediatric gurney, wrapping her small form securely. "Let's move! Now!" They rushed back to the ambulance, a whirlwind of focused medical activity. Tom and Sarah, their faces ashen masks of terror, grief, and the faintest, most fragile glimmer of hope, climbed numbly into the front passenger seat beside Maria, who took the wheel for the transport phase. As the ambulance sped towards the regional trauma center, sirens, now wailing relentlessly, cutting through the night. Daniel worked intensely in the back, adjusting ventilator settings, monitoring Lily's precarious heart rhythm and oxygen levels. But even as he worked, his trained eyes saw the subtle, ominous signs: pupils sluggishly reactive, a slight postural stiffness, telltale indicators of potential hypoxic brain injury, damage caused by the prolonged period her brain was deprived of oxygen, the delay, the senseless, infuriating delay at the gate hadn't just complicated the resuscitation, it had likely inflicted lasting, potentially irreversible damage. A cold, simmering fury settled deep in his gut, harder and heavier than any exhaustion. He made the necessary radio report to the receiving hospital's emergency department, detailing Lily's condition, the interventions performed, the suspected cause, and, crucially, explicitly stating the significant delay in accessing patient due to obstruction at gated community entrance, estimated at approximately 6 minutes. Then, his professional duties momentarily complete, he pulled out his personal cell phone, his thumb hovering over a familiar contact. He took a deep breath, the metallic tang of adrenaline still sharp in his mouth, and made the call. "Dad." His voice was low, strained, rough with emotion he couldn't quite suppress. "It's Daniel." "Yeah." "Rough call. We just transported a pediatric code. Anaphylaxis, we think." "Dad." "They wouldn't let us through the damn gate. Some HOA woman, power-tripping gatekeeper, blocked us for almost 6 minutes citing rules. Community rules." He paused, swallowing hard. "The kid, Lily, 7 years old," she coded. "We got her back. But she was down too long, Dad. Way too long. Hypoxic signs are there. She might not make it, or if she does," he choked back the rest. The image of Lily's blue face searing itself into his memory. It was Oak Bridge Reserve, the main gate on Willow Lane. On the other end of the line, in his quiet study miles away. Mayor David Hayes listened, his hand tightening on the phone receiver until his knuckles turned white. His son, Daniel, dedicated, compassionate, skilled paramedic, saving lives every day, it was a source of immense, quiet pride. But hearing the raw, uncharacteristic distress in Daniel's voice, the sickening details of the obstruction, the potential death or lifelong disability of an innocent child, because of some officious resident enforcing petty regulations with callous disregard for human life, it ignited a fury within him, cold and absolute. This wasn't just an isolated incident of poor judgment. It was a catastrophic failure of public safety, a profound dereliction of basic human decency. And it had happened on his watch. To his son's patient, Daniel, Mayor Hayes said, his voice suddenly hard as steel, cutting through his son's anguish. You focus on your patient. Do everything you can. Get her the best care possible. I'll handle this end. Trust me. He hung up, his mind already racing. He immediately dialed the police chief's direct line. Harris, it's Mayor Hayes. Wake up. This is urgent. I need you to launch an immediate, full investigation into a critical incident tonight. Location, Oak Bridge Reserve, Main Gate, Ambulance 73. My son Daniel's unit was criminally obstructed from reaching a dying child by a resident enforcing HOA rules. Obstructed for nearly 6 minutes. The child's life and future quality of life is in serious jeopardy directly due to this delay. His voice was low, dangerous. I want the person responsible identified. Name is likely Beverly Thorne, gate attendant volunteer. I want charges pursued immediately, to the fullest extent of the law. Felony child endangerment, reckless endangerment, obstruction of emergency services. Whatever your sharpest people and the day can make stick. Get the district attorney on the phone now. Brief him personally. This stops tonight. This kind of madness will not happen again in my city. The wheels of justice, greased by direct mayoral outrage and fueled by the undeniable gravity of the situation, a child's life hanging in the balance due to bureaucratic obstruction, turned with blinding, unprecedented speed. The responding police officer's body cam footage captured the entire gate confrontation, clearly showing Beverly Thorne's refusal to grant access and her citation of HOA rules over the paramedics' desperate pleas. Dispatch logs meticulously documented the timeline, the initial 911 call, Ambulance 7373's arrival at the gate, Daniel's frantic radio call requesting police assistance due to obstruction, the police arrival time, and the ambulance finally clearing the gate nearly 6 minutes after its initial arrival. The district attorney, briefed personally by both the police chief and the mayor, reviewed the preliminary evidence and immediately agreed. Beverly Thorne's actions clearly met the threshold for felony child endangerment and obstruction. A warrant for her arrest was drafted, reviewed by an on-call judge, and issued before the first rays of dawn painted the eastern sky. Given the high-profile nature the case had instantly acquired, the direct involvement of the mayor's son, the life of an innocent child critically endangered, the sheer, breathtaking callousness of the obstruction invoking widespread public fury as word began to leak. The decision was made at the highest levels to execute the arrest warrant with a high-risk entry team, the city's SWAT unit. The message needed to be unequivocal, delivered with overwhelming force, interfering with emergency services. Prioritizing petty rules over human life carries the severest consequences. There would be no quiet knock on the door, just as the sun began its ascent, casting long, dramatic shadows across the still sleeping, perfectly manicured lawns of Oak Bridge Reserve. The neighborhood's manufactured tranquility erupted in flashing lights and controlled, Intimidating chaos. SWAT vehicles, armored and imposing, rolled silently but purposefully through the now unobstructed main gates, converging with practiced precision on Beverly Thorne's meticulously maintained home on Magnolia Lane. Officers in full tactical gear, weapons ready, disembarked swiftly, establishing a secure perimeter around the property with terrifying efficiency. Neighbors, awakened by the unusual pre-dawn activity, peered fearfully from behind expensive window treatments, their curiosity quickly turning to shock and alarm. A news helicopter, tipped off by sources within the city administration, eager to demonstrate decisive action, hovered noisily overhead, its powerful camera zooming in, capturing the dramatic scene unfolding below for the morning news cycle. Local news vans, alerted by police scanners and official notifications, arrived moments later, setting up just outside the hastily established police cordon, microphones ready. A commanding voice, amplified through a bullhorn, shattered the morning quiet, echoing through the pristine streets. Beverly Thorne, this is the police department. We have a warrant for your arrest. Exit the residence immediately with your hands in the air. Inside her home, Beverly, likely jolted awake by the commotion, was probably peering through a gap in her custom blinds, her mind struggling to process the incomprehensible scene. Her sanctuary, her perfectly ordered world, was being invaded. Flashing lights strobed across her curated artwork. Men with rifles were surrounding her house. It was impossible. It had to be a mistake. After a tense minute ticked by with no response, the SWAT team leader gave the signal. A battering ram slammed against the reinforced front door. The sound cracked through the morning air like a gunshot. The door splintered, burst inward. Shouts followed, muffled but clear. "Police! Search warrant! Show us your hands!" Down on the ground. Moments later, the breached front door framed a shocking image. Beverly Thorne emerged, not walking under her own power, but being forcibly escorted, propelled forward by two heavily armed SWAT officers flanking her closely. She was still dressed in her expensive silk pajamas and robe, her normally severe haircut disheveled, her face pale, stripped bare, a mask of utter shock, confusion, and burgeoning terror. The ever-present clipboard and HOA rulebook were conspicuously absent. Her carefully cultivated arrogance had completely evaporated, replaced by raw, animal panic. She looked wildly around, her eyes darting between the flashing lights. The menacing weapons pointed vaguely in her direction, the news cameras broadcasting her utter humiliation live to the entire city. "What is this? What are you doing?" she shrieked, her voice high-pitched, unrecognizable. She struggled weakly, futilely, against the officer's firm, unyielding grip. "You can't do this. I haven't done anything wrong. I was following the rules. The community rules. I have rights." One of the escorting officers formally placed her wrists behind her back, securing them with handcuffs. The metallic click-click of the ratchet was unnervingly loud in the charged atmosphere. "Beverly Thorne," the officer stated clearly, his voice impassive, as he began reading her Miranda rights, while guiding her firmly towards a waiting marked police car. "You are under arrest for felony child endangerment and felony obstruction of emergency medical services." Her protests devolved into incoherent sobs, pleas of misunderstanding lost in the morning air. The indelible image of the rigid, rule-obsessed HOA enforcer, stripped of her authority and dignity, being hauled away in handcuffs from her fortress of conformity, her meticulously ordered world utterly collapsing around her on live television, was stark, brutal, and unforgettable. The story exploded like a wildfire across local and national media. HOA Karen blocks ambulance. Critically injures child, while citing rules screamed variations of headlines online, on television, on talk radio. The dramatic footage of Beverly's SWAT team arrest played on a seemingly endless loop. Public outrage was swift, visceral, and immense. People across the country, weary of stories of petty tyrants in positions of minor authority, were horrified by her chillingly callous disregard for a child's life. Her inexplicable elevation of arbitrary regulations over fundamental human decency. Oakbridge Reserve, the gated symbol of exclusivity, and its HOA were inundated with furious calls, scathing emails, and overwhelmingly negative press, becoming overnight symbols of bureaucratic inhumanity. The HOA board, scrambling into damage control mode, immediately issued multiple groveling public apologies, suspended all gatehouse volunteer activities indefinitely, and publicly, vehemently distanced themselves from Beverly Thorne and her actions, pledging a full, independent review of all community protocols. Inside Oakbridge, stunned residents gathered in small, hushed groups, grappling with the horror, the shame, and the dawning realization of the potential financial fallout. Whispers turned to angry demands for accountability at the next HOA meeting. Lily Miller, miraculously, against frightening odds, survived. She remained in the pediatric intensive care unit for many days, her condition critical, then serious, then slowly, painstakingly improving. The attending physicians confirmed the parents' worst fears. The significant delay in receiving epinephrine and advanced airway management had indeed caused a hypoxic brain injury. While the full extent might not be known for years, initial assessments indicated potential challenges ahead, possible impacts on cognitive function, language processing, and fine motor skills. Lily faced a long, uncertain road of therapy and specialized care, her future irrevocably altered by those 6 stolen minutes at the gate. Her parents, Tom and Sarah, oscillating between overwhelming relief at her survival and deep, traumatizing grief for the future she might have lost, retained legal counsel, and began exploring civil action against both Beverly Thorne personally and the Cedar Ridge Crossing HOA for negligence and endangerment. Beverly Thorne's legal battle was swift and brutal. Facing overwhelming, irrefutable evidence, the paramedics' testimony, the police officer's testimony, and body cam footage, the dispatch logs confirming the timeline, the damning footage of her arrest, and immense public pressure demanding justice, her defense crumbled before it even truly began. Citing the severity of the charges and her profound lack of judgment, potentially posing a danger to the community, the judge denied bail. The district attorney, bolstered by public opinion and the clear facts of the case, refused to entertain any plea deal that didn't involve significant, mandatory prison time. With little room to maneuver, Beverly was swiftly convicted on all felony counts. At the sentencing hearing, the judge, visibly angered by the facts presented, delivered a blistering condemnation of Beverly Thorne's actions, her voice ringing with moral outrage. Miss Thorne, your obsessive, pathological adherence to arbitrary rules you placed above the life of an innocent child, is not just incomprehensible, it is reprehensible, the judge stated, looking directly at a now hollow-eyed, visibly diminished Beverly. You held in your hands the power to facilitate aid, to potentially save a life, and you consciously chose, repeatedly, to obstruct it. You placed your perceived authority, your inflated sense of importance, derived from a volunteer position and a rule book, above fundamental human decency, above the law protecting emergency responders, and above the desperate pleas for help for a dying child. The courtroom was silent. There must be severe, Unequivocal consequences for such callous disregard for human life. Beverly Thorne was sentenced to a lengthy state prison term, stripped of her freedom, just as she had tried to arbitrarily control the freedom and safety of others. The judge also mandated significant financial restitution to the Miller family for Lily's ongoing medical care and future needs, a sum that would almost certainly lead to the forfeiture of Beverly's assets, including her prized, perfectly maintained home in Oakbridge Reserve. The incident sent shockwaves far beyond Oakbridge. It forced widespread changes in policy and awareness. Oakbridge Reserve, under immense legal and public pressure, completely overhauled its emergency access protocols, installing state-of-the-art automated gate systems with direct links to the County 911 Dispatch Center, ensuring unimpeded, immediate entry for all verified first responders. Other gated communities across the state, fearing similar incidents and lawsuits, reviewed and updated their own procedures. The state legislature, spurred by direct lobbying from Mayor Hayes, emergency responder unions, and child advocacy groups, swiftly drafted and passed Lily's Law, significantly strengthening criminal penalties for obstructing emergency services and explicitly clarifying the non-negotiable right of access for first responders in gated communities statewide. The final, lingering image wasn't one of Beverly Thorne shuffling numbly into a prison transport van. It was of Lily Miller, months later, back home, her laughter still tentative but undeniably present, as she kicked a brightly colored ball across her backyard under the watchful, tear-filled eyes of her parents. Her recovery was ongoing, the future uncertain, but her resilience was a quiet testament against the darkness of that night. It was the image of Mayor David Hayes pinning a commendation for bravery and quick thinking onto his son Daniel's uniform, the pride in his eyes mixed with the somber, indelible knowledge of how terribly close tragedy had come, how thin the line between life and death could be, and how easily it could be severed by ignorance and arrogance. The reign of HOA Karen Beverly Thorne had ended not just in personal ruin, public disgrace, and justified imprisonment, but in a costly, hard-won affirmation. Rules must serve humanity, not the other way around. And that obstructing those desperately trying to save a life is not merely a violation of protocol, but a profound offense against society itself, demanding the swiftest, most severe form of justice. The gates of Oakbridge Reserve now stood open for emergency vehicles, a silent monument to a lesson learned at almost unimaginable cost.